Beatboxing skills. No, I'm kidding. Thank you for coming out, everyone. The village b-boy. I'm gonna explain it in a nutshell. So the village. My name is Aniekan Udofia, and obviously you can tell I'm a painter. The village b-boy in the past, my history is more in the illustration field. I've been doing illustrations. My inspiration from when I was young goes way back. I was born here in DC, and once my parents finished their education, they decided to move back to Nigeria. And I can remember as far back as I was 5 or 6, we would go in a grocery store, and that's the early stages, the beginnings. I would look at cereal boxes and notice illustration stuff that was drawn. I remember this one specific one where I saw Aunt Jemima on the box, on the syrup thing, and I drew my mom's attention to it, and she almost slapped me, like, what are you talking about? And I was like, no, that's a painting, it's a painting, it's drawn. And she looked at it and she's like, we're here shopping, why is that important? Like that? Years later, this is happening. So anyway, when we moved back to Nigeria around the 80s, around 82, we went straight to the village because my parents wanted us to get a good feel of what the village is like, what Nigeria is like, where you're from, get a good feel of the culture. So growing up there, and then in the 90s, when I grew up on a lot of different kinds of music, which is also inspiration as well. So we have like heavyweights in music, like we listen to a lot of reggae and Afrobeat, high life music, so on. And the one thing about these kind of music is they have certain messages, whether it's Sweet Mother, which is like an international life song, or Fela's music. So then came hip hop. Hip hop, Fela's music, what a lot of people don't know is, like, especially how I grew up, we were not allowed to listen to Fela because he was rebellious. And his image wasn't that could be sold to kids. He was smoking, half the time he was promoting sex, and his image wasn't something to promote, but his music was. We had to listen to Fela in secret. So when hip hop came out, they didn't know that it was almost like they were giving us the leeway to go even deeper. So they were like, yeah, you can listen to your little rapping nonsense, you know. But you can't listen to Fela. And we're like, okay, listen, Fight the Power is the same as Zombie, you know. So this is where hip hop started exploding. And with this show, I'm not trying to document hip hop per se, but I'm trying to document more how cultures merge. Because what I noticed was, for example, the Mama Said Knock You Out piece, for example, there's a story behind that. We were in a village. There's something called inter-house sports. And if you're from Nigeria, you know what that means. This is where, like, a huge event where they have sporting events and so on and so forth. So we went to an inter-house sports in a village somewhere at a school, and we saw this woman wearing something like that. And it was an old woman, and so we got all crazy, like, oh, where did you get that t-shirt from? And she had some stuff laid around, and she was selling like oranges and fruits and stuff like that. So we started asking her, where did you get this t-shirt from, and so on. She's like, it's a t-shirt. And we're like, no, that's LL Cool J. LL Cool J, where did you get this from? So she's just sitting there like, okay, or whatever. And it's 15 of us hovered around like, LL Cool J, Mama Said Knock You Out. And she's sitting there and she's going, okay, fine, But then we noticed that next time we hit that village, this time, when we went over there, we started calling her Hip Hop Grandma. Hip Hop Grandma, what you hip hop grandma? I'm father, and all that stuff. So all of a sudden, we're walking by and she throws up 2 fingers, and we went crazy. We lost it. We just totally lost it. We're like, oh, this is hip hop. And then we started telling her, what other of mixtapes you got? You know? Like, what's up, grandma? You know, what's going on? It showed, what I noticed from that was like how this hip hop culture, which is far away, and this village, which is so far from whether the culture or whatever, how it brought these two together. And she knew that that t-shirt was a marketing tool, so she would wear it all the time. And all of a sudden, wherever we were, we like, oh, we could say we were in this village and this one was wearing, they like, I know her. You know, so it connected all the hip hop heads to direct their attention towards her when we were in wherever they were in the village. So she knew it was a marketing tool. But later on you find out, like say the girl over there who's wearing the Adidas tracksuit, like that was all her idea. So like there were these little hip hop B-boys and B-girls hidden in between the villages, and we knew hip hop by name and style and culture or whatever. These people had access to it. So they knew, they worked out of town. So I grew up in Akwa Ibom State. Akwa Ibom State is in the southeastern side. And we went to school and lived at home. Some of these kids, they worked out of town. So places, big towns, bigger cities like Lagos, they had a lot of access to the tapes and the music that was out. So these village kids, we would write down lists of what music they should get. And they would go and they would bring it. As in the pieces in the back, there's a piece called Soak and Travel. Now, how many people from Nigeria in here? All right, okay, Nigeria people, okay, oh yeah. Okay. So, how many Nigeria people know about Soak and Travel? Come on, okay now. So, Soak and Travel in a nutshell is when you take Gary and you put it, you have maybe a handful of Gary and you put it in a big bowl, but you load the water up to the top. And then you leave it to start rising, you know, and then you put your sugar in it and all that. And we used to call it Soak and Travel, but I switched that concept into a painting where Soak and Travel became, we'll write down the list. You go bring the tape back. And by the time you bring the tape back, we have hip hop. So the pieces in this show kind of have those little subtleties. And I didn't want to be too literal with what I was painting. Like, oh, they're breakdancing or they're rapping and so on. But I wanted to show more like how something simple as an idea, which we know here as hip-hop, penetrated deep into a culture that had no clue where, for example, the Public Enemy piece, which is over there, I put Public Enemy on the fabric because I didn't want to, that felt like that's the best way to explain that piece was to put Public Enemy logos on it, because I remember an instant where someone was listening to Fight the Power, and we explained in our language what Fight the Power meant, what the song meant. And all of a sudden, these people in the villages are playing the song. They don't understand one word from it, but they knew from what we explained to them what it means. So they kept playing it. And another thing too, another dope story is the Naira power. There's a kid with a Naira sign. Naira is the Nigerian currency. This story was about, this kid walked into a barber shop and he sat down to get his hair cut, but he wanted a dollar sign on his head. So the barber was like, I'm not putting a dollar sign on. And if Nigerians, you know how we are, you're like, oh boy, I'm not gonna give you dollar sign. Where your dollars now? Boy, shut up. What do you know about dollars? Just tell them what do you know about dollars, and they went back and forth, and the guy's like, don't you know that dollars is the biggest money in the world? And they're like, oh boy, talk about pounds, you know, and so on. So they went back and forth, and then eventually the barber got so mad that he was like, okay, oh boy, listen, I'll put the dollar sign on your head if you show me 1 cent. And then there was silence. They got oh boy, just put the Naira sign on, forget about it. So I call that Naira power because it showed like that's still hip hop attitude. Hip hop is like, I'm better than you, know, I'm gonna get on stage, I'm gonna battle, you know, and so on. And it wasn't like that was a hip hop battle, but it was a hip hop moment. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you convince your customer? You need his money, but you convince him to not put what he wanted on his head. I don't get it. So that's hip hop. hop to me, you know, like that's what it was. Like, you had people where there was the guy we used to call Planet of the Tapes. This guy had a billion tapes that he had no clue what